The Lord be with you. As we travel through these weeks of not being able to gather in our normal way for public worship, I have to confess that the occasion I'll most miss in the Christian year actually is the one we keep this weekend. The feast of the presentation of Christ in the temple, often known as Candlemas. On February the 2nd, 40 days, always a significant number, 40 days after Christmas, we come to the last event in the Christmas story, particularly as told by Luke, when Joseph and Mary bring the young Jesus to be presented to the Lord as a firstborn in a special way in the Temple of Jerusalem, and they offer the prescribed sacrifice, and there they meet two faithful people who are, as it were, constant presences, it seems, in the temple courts, Anna and Simeon. And Simeon, recognizing that this is no ordinary presentation of a baby, sings the song we call Nunc Dimittis, Lord, now you let your servant go in peace, for mine eyes have seen your salvation. A song which has come to mark worship at the end of the day for centuries, and indeed often is the kind of words we seek to have on our lips at the end of our very lives. Candlemas is so called because of the custom in many places and traditions of lighting candles, even as the days grow longer, lighting candles to mark the Christ who is acclaimed by Simeon as the true light of the world. And quite often it's customary to observe Candlemas on the Sunday nearest to it, which would be the Sunday of this weekend, and to join in the feelings of Simeon and Anna and in their insight. I often think that Simeon and Anna should really be in the crib along with the shepherds and the wise men. The crib is very imaginative anyway. The wise men probably never visited Jesus in a stable. But just as the wise men represent the outsiders, the wise of the day, the Gentiles and the shepherds represent almost the stragglers of society, those who were despised because they couldn't observe the Sabbath properly because of their work, and yet they were welcome at the crib. Simeon and Anna, somehow in their recognition of the Christ child, represent the ordinary, foot-slogging faithful, those who keep faith with the faith of their upbringing, who maintain their hope. They're rather like the pew persons of the Church of Ireland, I often think. So perhaps they should be in the crib. But as I think of Simeon and Anna, and Simeon's words to Mary that amidst her joy, her child will also bring judgment on Israel and will have a painful destiny which will break her heart too. One often is reminded that Candlemas is a bittersweet day. We have a look back towards the birth of Christ, but we also carry the story forward towards the cross, and we have a sense of Mary's joy and yet her sense of painful anticipation. So Candlemas is perhaps above all a hinge moment. The last part of the birth story, the anticipation of the cross, the moment when we put the gloom of winter behind us, the light is increasing. It's the moment when we combine crib and cross, and as a hymn puts it, Christmas greets Easter on Candlemas Day as the candles invite us to praise and to pray. And as we think of that hinge moment, I often think of not just the bittersweet moments in our lives, which Candlemas in a way exemplifies, and the gospel must always throw light on the bittersweetness of the human predicament, but I often think of the hinge moments, those moments when we stop at a particular moment, perhaps a break in the chapters of our life story, to look both forwards and backwards, to review what has been, to look to the future with some hope, but also a measure of fear. And I think of those hinge moments and how they need, in our own individual lives and in our wider societal story, how they need to be sanctified. I can think of various hinge moments that one experiences. One of them in one's youth is that moment when one leaves home for the first time, perhaps goes to live in college accommodation, that first night when you realize you're no longer being minded, when your food is no longer being served, when you're on your own, when the parental car drives away and leaves you there to fend for yourself as a young adult. That's a hinge moment, which is full of bravado but also of a certain fear, and it's a moment when one needs strength and grace. Another moment, probably, I dare to hope some years ahead of me yet, but which many have experienced and which I admire their handling of, is that moment of retirement, when everything that has been the familiar rhythm of work stops and one contemplates what one has tried to do and the fruitfulness of one's life, and also looks into another chapter with a certain apprehension and also with a measure of excitement. Hinge moments, and they need to be moments of strength and of grace. And what in a way could be a greater hinge moment? I'd never have thought of this when I talked about hinge moments last year at Candlemas. What could be a greater hinge moment than this hinge moment of the pandemic year? Because in a way, we look back at what once was normal. We cherish the memory of it. We almost wonder at the very reality of how it was. And we also look forward and hope, with the help of skill and vaccination and general human resilience, we hope to pass beyond this moment. But will the new future, the next chapter, be like the previous chapter was? What lessons will we have learned from this? How will we relate to each other again? How will we be forever changed as a society because of what we have been through for this almost a year now? So we stand this Candlemas on a particular hinge moment, the like of which probably most of us will never see, bar this one time, we hope, in our lifetimes. And if out of it can manage to come a measure of courage and of grace and of vision, that will be something very blessed. Meanwhile, we hope to end each day just as we aspire to end our days, singing with Simeon of the discernment of the true light in whose honour the candles are lit, and who comes to enlighten us and to enlighten all. In traditional words, Lord, now lettest thou thy servant depart in peace according to thy word. For mine eyes have seen thy salvation, which thou hast prepared before the face of all people, to be a light to lighten the Gentiles, and the glory of thy people Israel. Amen.